Hello again, I'm Alisa, creator of the Dr. Puppet, and today we're going to talk about puppets! This is where I make the puppets for Dr. Puppet in my kitchen, in my tiny little apartment in Brooklyn. This is actually where most of the work for Dr. Puppet gets done. We animate it right over there. So yeah, it's pretty amazing how much stuff gets done in this little apartment. Yay! So these are all the supplies that I use to make puppets, and I'm going to just step you through the different stages in the creation of a puppet and talk about what all these different things do. So first we're going to talk about armatures, like this guy. So this is the armature that is inside of each puppet. This is what allows the puppet to be posed in any position needed. And then photographed in that pose, and then repeated 12 times to create 1 second of stop motion animation. In each episode of Dr. Puppet, there are hundreds of photographs of the puppet posed in a different way. It takes between 2 and 3 weeks to animate an episode of Dr. Puppet, plus another few weeks to do the pre- and post-production on it. So if you've watched making of videos about stop-motion productions before, you've probably seen a few different styles of armature. You may have seen what's called a ball and socket armature. That's frequently used in feature films. It's a more complicated armature. It requires a lot of machines to make. It looks more like a realistic skeleton though, with joints at the elbows and the shoulder and the hips. This is a simpler style of armature. Still gets the job done though. This is called an aluminum wire armature. So this right here is aluminum wire. It's 4 strands twisted together. This is how I buy my aluminum wire. You have to buy this at a craft store. You won't find it at the hardware store. It has to be aluminum because steel wire will break faster. And aluminum wire will also break eventually. I can usually get between 1 minute and 2 minutes of animation out of the puppet before the aluminum wire starts to break. So to deal with that, the armature is actually built in a modular style. Each piece is separate and removable. I use square brass tubing, which is this stuff here. This comes in a lot of different sizes that nest inside of each other. I cut that with a jeweler's saw to size, and then I glue the aluminum wire into the brass tubing, and I use a larger piece of brass tubing. Oop, there goes a leg. These normally get glued in, but not right now. I use a larger piece of brass tubing at the shoulder and the pelvis, and then you can just easily add and replace the limbs as needed. So, like, for example, here's an old broken arm. You see that the fingers are all broken there and the wire's all twisted, beat up. And here's a brand new arm that we'll replace it with. Easy peasy. So what this stuff is right here is what's called plumber's epoxy. So you buy this at the hardware store. It comes in a tube like this. So it's this stuff. It's 2 different colors and you mix them together, and in about 5 minutes it dries really hard. So I just embed my my square brass pieces in there, and that's how I build up that armature. So the arms and the hands, the hand part, I make this out of aluminum wire and a little bit of the plumber's epoxy for the palm. And then to create the thickness of the fingers, I actually dip this into liquid latex, which is this stuff right here. I dip it in, I let it dry. It takes a few hours to dry, and then I dip it again. And after about 5 dips in the latex, you get these nice fat fleshy looking fingers. And then the final coat, which I haven't applied yet, I will add some paint, just acrylic paint like this with the latex, and then we'll have a finished hand like this. Now the legs, the feet are also made of the plumber's epoxy, but I embed in the bottom of the foot, if you can see, a nut like this, because when the puppet is on set, it actually can't stand on the set on its own. To get it to stand on the set, and especially to hold really off-balance positions on one leg, which happens a lot, especially when the puppet's walking and running, it is actually held to the set with a screw like this. So the hole is drilled through the bottom of the set, and then we use this bolt to go right up through the bottom of the set, and then we go into the puppet's foot and we screw that right in, just like that. So that is what allows a puppet to stand on a stop motion set, just like magic. We use a wing nut to fasten it, and we're ready to take that frame. One of 12 frames to create 1 second of stop motion animation. So next, we'll talk about how I make the head of a stop motion puppet. So the head of a stop motion puppet takes me a long time to make. It actually takes me about as long to make the head as to make the rest of the body, because the head's really important since we spend a lot of time looking at that, so it needs to look really good. So every stop motion puppet head actually starts as a balled up piece of aluminum foil like this, which I glue a piece of the square brass tubing inside of course, so that later is where the puppet's neck will be attached, just like that. Over that piece of aluminum foil, I will add some Super Sculpey Firm. So this is my favorite type of clay to work with. If you've worked with Sculpey before, you know it can often be really soft and kind of sticky, and it doesn't hold detail really well. So they make this particular kind, Sculpey Firm. It's much firmer, not very sticky, it's really waxy, it holds detail super well. So I love working with this, and bakes hard right in your oven, which is very convenient. So that's what the puppet head is made of. Here is an old head for a puppet, not related to Dr. Puppet, so don't speculate over who this is, it doesn't matter. So an old character. So you'll see here that this guy's all baked, and he's been painted as well, but he has no hair. So never got his hair made. So how I make a wig, like the one here, is a very tedious process actually. I go to the beauty shop and I buy hair extensions like this. They're very cheap, just cost a few dollars, and you get this nice big bag of hair extensions. Just like this. This is the hair extensions I used for my Clara puppet. See, I still have a lot of it left. So it's really good stuff. And how I do this is I actually cut off a little piece like this size, and I glue that onto the head with some super glue. And I repeat that a few hundred times, and I end up with enough hair on the head that I take scissors to it and I give the puppet a haircut, just like it were a real person. And then I use hairspray, again like a real person, and I just style the hair until it stays in place. So we end up with very stiff hair, you'll see, because we don't want it to move around too much while it's being animated. And it usually takes me between a day and 2 days to make the wig, depending how complicated it is. Eleven's wig was pretty complicated, as was the wig for the 10th Doctor, because they're pretty short, and there's a very specific way in which the hairline moves, so that took a long time. A wig for a puppet like Clara was actually a lot simpler, because just making long hair is really easy. Wish more doctors had long hair. The 9th Doctor, his hair was so short actually that I couldn't get it to look good, so for his I just ended up sculpting it with clay. But all the other doctors have long enough hair, I'd probably be able to make a wig. Yeah, so that's how the hair is done. The eyes are just clay, and then I add a little bit of varnish on them so they're shiny. And if the character has eyebrows, an 11th Doctor does not have eyebrows. If they do, I just paint those on, because those don't animate. The mouth animates, however, so you'll see that this character here, he doesn't have a mouth yet. because that is not added until he's ready for animation. So here's the mouth on the 11th Doctor, and you'll see it's actually a sticker. I can pull it off just like that. So this is actually just a piece of paper that was painted black, and there is a little bit of beeswax on the back, and that is what holds it onto his face. So when he's animated, he'll have a mouth on there, and if he needs to change expressions, we'll just swap it out with a different kind of mouth, just like that. And I've had a lot of people ask me for how I do the mouths for all the still photos I take for the Tumblr blog. Those are actually added in Photoshop. When I have the puppet out and I'm bringing him around to different places and locations and taking photos, I don't usually know what kind of mouth I want on him yet. So for that, because they're still photos, I'll just draw the mouth on in Photoshop. But when he's animated, the mouth has to actually be on the face. So I know a few people had noticed there was a difference in how the mouths looked in the animation version of still photos. So that's why paper mouths for animation, Photoshop mouths for still photos. So that is how the head is made, just like that. So next we will talk about the costumes. So the very last thing the puppet needs before it's ready for its costume is a little bit of flesh on the armature so it's not so skinny. I do like to keep the arms and legs thin because I like that lanky look with these guys, but the middle needs a little bit of something so it just gets built up and it's not skinny like that. So what I use is upholstery foam. I buy this in an upholstery shop, but you can also open up an old couch or a seat cushion and take some of this out. So here is a pre-cut piece that fits his middle here. This will glue right onto the armature. I glue it in with some rubber cement, and that will stick right on there, and it will move along with the armature so we can bend the puppet in any shape. And he'll have some flesh on him. So this is what you build up if you want your puppet to be fat or any shape, because the armature is so skinny, so you're going to have to build this up. You can put it on the arms and the legs and the neck, falling apart, or anywhere needed, just so your puppet can have any shape you want, basically. So once that upholstery foam is on there, the puppet is ready for its costume. And here is the 11th Doctor in his completed costume. So the very first thing I do when I'm ready to make a puppet's costume is I have to find the fabric. And that can be a bit of a challenge with these doctors, because not only do I have to find fabric that looks like the fabric that the doctor wears, it also has to be to scale for these tiny puppets. So it's really hard to find those tight patterns sometimes. I was really fortunate. I actually already had some menswear fabric like this that was pretty similar in a really tight pattern that looked a lot like one of the jackets that the 11th Doctor wore. So I was really fortunate that I had that. That worked out really well. For most of the fabric, I find it's the easiest way to do it, and the cheapest way is I just go to a second-hand shop or a charity shop like a Goodwill or a Salvation Army, and I buy clothes there. I can usually get a shirt or a pair of pants for a couple of dollars, and I cut that up. So for his shirt, I think I bought a real men's shirt and I cut this up. That was really convenient. I was even able to use a piece of the real shirt's collar to make his collar because that was stiff. I also used it to make the seam up the middle. The buttons I make from clay, and those get glued on. I used red satin for his suspenders and his bow tie, and that also gets glued on. For the jacket itself, that was the most complicated part. I researched what the Doctor's jacket looks like, and I found a pattern for a very similar looking men's jacket, and then I actually printed that pattern off my computer on printer paper just to scale, a little tiny pattern for a jacket, and then I cut that out of the menswear fabric. So this is a real pattern for a men's jacket. So that worked really, really well. Now for some of the other Doctors, I've had a real challenge trying to find fabric that worked. The 10th Doctor, believe it or not, was a huge challenge. I think I had to go to 3 different charity shops before I finally found brown fabric with a small enough pale blue pinstripe. These are actually a pair of women's pants from the Gap. Very cut up now, but that is what his suit is made of. That was a challenge. Now for the 9th Doctor, I expected to buy pleather, and to use that to make his jacket, but I actually ended up buying a real leather jacket and cutting that up. So this is a piece of that real leather, and then I just beat it up a little with some sandpaper, just rubbed that, and that just gave it that kind of worn look. So that was pretty easy actually. So now I'm going to show you what the costume looks like when I take it apart. So I'm just going to pop out those modular arms. And you'll see that with these puppets, whatever part of the costume is not visible, I don't really make. So I decided early on that the 11th Doctor would never take his jacket off. I mean, the real 11th Doctor often, very rarely does he actually take his jacket off, so I decided this guy never would. So I never actually made sleeves for his shirt. And you see even the back of his shirt, which I knew we'd never see, isn't even finished, and the suspenders don't even go all the way down the back. I knew we'd never see that, so it didn't matter. So that is how a costume for a puppet is made. Costume usually takes me between a day and 2 days to make. The whole puppet takes between 4 days and a week, depending how complicated it is. Yeah, so that's a very extensive overview of how I make a puppet. Thanks so much for watching this video all the way to the end. As a reward, I will tell you that the next episode of Dr. Puppet will premiere later this summer. So stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!